Welcome back to Zalengam Media. Today in this video, we will discuss May 3rd. Why the Kuki-Zo people declared Separation Day. On May 3rd, 2023, the hills of Manipur were set ablaze, not just by literal fire, but by the searing pain of betrayal, violence, and ethnic hatred. What began as a simmering conflict erupted into an uncontrollable storm that would uproot lives, demolish homes, and leave an indelible scar on the hearts of the Kuki-Zo people. In response, the Kuki-Zo community solemnly declared May 3rd as Separation Day, a powerful symbol of their collective cry for dignity, justice, and self-determination. A day etched in blood and memory. May 3rd, 2023 is now remembered as the day when the long-standing fractures in Manipur society exploded into chaos. The violence that erupted on that day was not spontaneous. It was the culmination of years of systemic discrimination, marginalization, and political hostility against the Kuki-Zo people. What unfolded was nothing short of a humanitarian catastrophe. Over 300 Kuki villages were reduced to ashes, more than 60,000 people were displaced, over 1,000 injured, and more than 300 lives lost. The victims included women, children, the elderly. None were spared. Families were torn apart and entire communities were wiped off the map. Camps for internally displaced persons sprang up across the hills, filled with the echoing cries of those who had lost everything. The silence of the state. Under the leadership of Chief Minister N. Biren Singh, the Kukis were not merely neglected, they were dehumanized. In Imphal and other Meitei-dominated regions, Kukis were subjected to humiliation, arbitrary arrests, public lynchings, and even torture. Government forces either looked the other way or were allegedly complicit in the atrocities. For the Kuki-Zo people, the message was loud and clear. They were no longer safe under the current regime. This wasn't simply a breakdown of law and order. It was the collapse of the social contract that binds a people to their state. When a government becomes an agent of oppression instead of protection, rebellion becomes a form of survival. An assault on identity beyond the physical violence, the Kuki-Zo people were also subjected to a cultural and historical onslaught. Their history, particularly their valorous resistance in the Anglo-Kuki War, 1917 to 1919, was either erased or misrepresented. There were deliberate attempts to delegitimize their indigenous status and reduce them to illegal migrants, a slanderous label with dangerous consequences. Furthermore, sacred Kuki symbols were defaced, churches were burned, and religious leaders were targeted. The attack wasn't just on lives and property. It was an attack on identity, faith, and memory. For a people whose oral traditions and ancestral ties are central to their existence, such erasures are tantamount to cultural genocide. The role of civil society and armed groups. While many CSOs, civil society organizations, and armed groups within the Meitei community either remained silent or actively participated in the unrest, the Kuki-Zo people's cries for help were met with indifference by the wider state apparatus. Reports surfaced of Kuki women being publicly humiliated and sexually assaulted. Entire families were slaughtered in broad daylight, and all this happened while central and state authorities failed to intervene decisively. The Kuki-Inpi Manipur, KIM, the apex body representing the Kuki people, finally broke its silence and declared May 3rd as Separation Day in 2025. This declaration came as both a symbolic protest and a political affirmation of their belief that separation from Manipur is the only viable solution. The call for separation. The idea of separation is not born out of ambition, but out of necessity. For the Kuki-Zo community, the events of May 3rd, 2023 were not just a tragedy, but a revelation. They realized that peaceful coexistence with the Meitei majority under the current political arrangement is no longer feasible. The wounds are too deep, the betrayals too many. Separation is seen not as secession, but as self-preservation. It is the right to self-govern in their ancestral lands, to protect their culture, to educate their children in peace, and to worship without fear. It is the right to build a future where they are not perpetually living under the shadow of oppression. Observing Separation Day. In 2024, the Committee on Tribal Unity, COTU, enforced a complete shutdown in Kangpokpi district on May 3rd to mark the first anniversary of the violence. Ceremonies were held at the Martyrs Cemetery in Phajing village. Thousands gathered to honor the lives lost and to reaffirm their commitment to the cause of separation. It was not just a day of mourning, but also a day of resolve. By 2025, the observance had taken on a formal character, with the Kuki-Zo Manipur officially recognizing May 3rd as Separation Day. Banners, black flags, and moments of silence define the day, along with renewed calls for justice and autonomy. The road ahead. The Kuki-Zo people's struggle for a separate administration is rooted in their demand for a future that guarantees security, identity, and dignity. Their vision is not one of revenge, but of redemption. They seek to rise from the ashes, not to destroy, but to rebuild. Of course, the path to separation will be fraught with challenges. Political opposition, logistical complexities, and international sensitivities will all come into play. Yet the moral case is unshakable. A community that has suffered so grievously, that has been rendered voiceless in its own land, must be given the right to determine its own fate. Conclusion: a cry that cannot be ignored. May 3rd is no longer just a date. It is a declaration, a reminder, and the separation day between Kukis and Métis, and a prayer. A declaration of broken trust, a reminder of suffering, and a prayer for a better tomorrow. Separation is not a cry of hatred. It is a demand for life. The Kuki-Zo people have declared May 3rd as Separation Day because they have no other choice. The world must recognize this not as a political stunt, but as a cry for survival. Disclaimer: this article is based on publicly reported news, events, and official statements made by civil society groups and organizations. It aims to reflect the experiences and perspectives of the Kuki-Zo community during and after the May 3rd, 2023 violence in Manipur. Zalengam Media is not responsible for individual opinions or third-party actions cited herein. Subscribe to Zalengam Media to stay updated on stories that matter. Your voice strengthens ours.
Una cabine. Cágalo, yes. Una cabine. Một tuần nhiều với nhau rồi. Bên này. Nó pari không ca gì hết. Không ca thật đi nữa.